Wow, what a controversial week, huh? Especially with the president asking, hey, can you just tell me 5 things that you're doing last week so I know you actually exist and are working? How dare him? That's outrageous. Well, the Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE, has been extremely busy making all kinds of outrageous demands like that one. Elon Musk is vowing to find $1 trillion in cuts. I hope he can do it. It's driving the left absolutely bat-crap crazy, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. I mean, to watch them go crazy couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. So, while DOGE has its magnifying glass out, I think perhaps we should turn our attention to what would be the granddaddy of all audits. The final opening of not only the Federal Reserve, but all the books on America's gold. There's something big going on with gold right now. I'm not going to explain it other than there's kind of like a run on the gold supply around the world. I'm not sure what it is, but this new era that we're in, this transparency of government, I don't think it's too much just to say, hey, can I look under America's economic hood and make sure everything checks out with our gold engine, you know? Because we supposedly have gold in Fort Knox. We supposedly have gold in West Point. We supposedly have gold in Denver. And we also have it at the Federal Reserve in New York. And it's all marked U.S. gold. It's all ours. We got it. Well, we haven't seen it for a long time. So what should we do? Well, over the past half century, we've become so used to our government just playing with monopoly money, just printing cash like it's going out of style, something they swore to me 15 years ago, we would never do that. Well, they're doing it. Most people don't consider the importance of gold anymore, but it's a pretty big deal. And it's something I've been talking about for a very, very long time. Here I am 15 years ago.
I'm using this as a gold doorway because I want you to understand this is a door frame into insanity. You get to this point, things are nuts. It's like California. How nuts does it have to be in California when there's an earthquake to where you say, where is the only place that could possibly save me because the entire house is coming down? They tell you, stand in the door frame. Now, it's better to be outside. It's better to not be in a building. It's better to, not live in California for a lot of reasons. But if worse comes to worse, and you have to stand there, you stand in the doorway. It's the safest place. Economically speaking, that has always been gold. It is the refuge and the safety net from inflation.
And insanity. So last week, I sent a letter to President Trump requesting a full audit of our nation's largest gold reserve, which supposedly is stored right here at Fort Knox. And it's been there for the past 90 years. The idea of cracking open the vault and letting Americans see if our gold is still there, I don't know, seems like pretty low-hanging fruit. At a very dangerous time when Americans are more skeptical than ever about our government, the Treasury, the Fed, the IRS, the financial elites, confirming what's inside of, Fort Knox, might go a long way to help it restore some measure of faith in our institutions, especially our monetary system, which is just, as I usually say, the floatiest piece of crap in the toilet bowl. It all is crap, but America's on the top, right? It boils down to this. If America's gold reserves are totally secure, as the government claims, then we should have no reason why we can't see it ourselves. Now, I don't mean we make Fort Knox into, a tourist attraction, although I think it would make money. But allow some trusted eyewitnesses and skeptics with cameras to go inside to verify what's in there. I mean, I'd go in, I'd sign something that says if I ever, divulge how to get into the vault or how it's stacked or whatever the secrets are, you're going to throw me in prison. But I want to know that it is all there. Well, good news. Late last week, President Trump seemed to agree.
We do want to look. We hope everything's fine with Fort Knox, but we're going to go to Fort Knox, the fabled Fort Knox, to make sure the gold is there.
Where would the gold have gone?
If the gold isn't there, we're going to be very upset.
Okay. It would be very bad if the gold wasn't in there. But there are, remember, 4 places that we need to check. Only a presidential order can open the vault at Fort Knox. And other than FDR, no president that we know of has ever visited Fort Knox. In 1941, the U.S. had 649.6 million ounces of gold stored at Fort Knox. Today, it has about 147.3 million ounces. So what happened to the rest? Well, it's partially supposed to be in 3 other vaults, and we used a lot of it to rebuild Europe after World War II. But let me rewind a minute to explain. From the late 1800s through roughly the start of World War II, the U.S. monetary system operated on the gold standard. That meant that every dollar was worth a dollar of gold. You could go to a bank and say, I want this in gold, not paper, and they'd have to give it to you. The gold was held by the U.S. government. No nation today follows the gold standard. None. World War II and Bretton Woods agreement kind of blew up the true gold standard. We were the only ones. In 1944, as victory was looking more likely for the Allies, the United Nations organized a conference in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to chart a new financial course for post-World War. And what did they come up with? Well, the biggest outcome of Bretton Woods was that the leading Western powers agreed to establish the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Countries could exchange dollars for gold at a rate of $35 an ounce. Notice I said countries were allowed to do that. U.S. citizens couldn't exchange their dollars for gold, but I'll come back to that later. By 1960, though, this system was already starting to fall apart. Why? Well, 2 good reasons. Vietnam war's very expensive, and so are socialist programs like Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. Both cost massive amounts of money, and we didn't have enough gold to do both. And why choose boopy when you don't have to? We just got off the gold standard and decided, don't worry about it. We'll just keep printing money. Except we weren't keeping up. We were digging ourselves a giant hole, and all those extra dollars flooding the system meant that the U.S. didn't have enough physical gold to cover the dollar at $35 an ounce, according to the Bretton Woods Agreement. We were all in sudden danger of losing all of our gold supply and the world's reserve currency. Did you know that France sent warships to New York to get their gold? I would have loved to see that. France, the president then, Charles de Gaulle, took advantage of the vulnerability and aggressively redeemed hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. gold and brought it back to France. And by 1971, this drain on U.S. gold reserves caused President Nixon to basically end the Bretton Woods system by halting foreign nations from converting their U.S. dollars into gold. Nixon preserved what was left of our gold, but his action also meant that the dollar was no longer pegged to any kind of gold standard. It became the petrodollar, backed on Saudi oil. A decade later, President Reagan formed a commission to study returning to the gold standard, but the commission determined, it wasn't really in our interest, to do that. Kind of an interesting side note, one congressman who was on that commission dissented from the majority's opinion. It was Congressman Ron Paul. And 30 years later, in 2011, he was still talking about returning to the gold standard and doing a full audit of the gold at Fort Knox. Today, America's gold is still a key federal asset. In fact, we have much more gold by far than any other country in the world. But it's not part of our monetary system. It's just an asset on our sheet, and it hasn't been part of our monetary system for decades. So if we're not on gold anymore, the standard, why do we need the gold in Fort Knox? Why do we need to audit it? Because gold still undergirds our financial system, kind of like a fail-safe. As former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan once told Ron Paul, you hold on to the gold, quote, just in case we need it. You hold on to it because it's the ultimate in money, kind of that golden door frame from 15 years ago. We also need to know the status of our government's gold because there are some major shifts taking place in the gold market today. Someone is buying a crap load of gold. There are record amounts of it arriving at COMEX, the commodity exchange in New York City. The Financial Times blames this surge on fears about Trump's tariffs. Maybe. Or is it something else? What if the U.S. Fed is buying up gold, trying to shore up our balance sheet to make us look healthier than we really are? Or maybe we're reshoring the gold that might have been leased out. I'll explain in a minute. Or maybe some combination of both, perhaps to prepare for a major shift in our entire financial system. What would that shift look like? Well, recently, new U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said we're going to, quote, monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. What does that mean? He says it doesn't include gold, but what does it include? And if it includes the U.S. revaluing its gold, the U.S. Treasury right now has that stockpile, and it is priced at $42 an ounce because that was the level set by the law in 1973. Meanwhile, the real world has gold selling at almost $3,000 an ounce. Now imagine for a moment if the U.S. gold stockpile were revalued to reflect the true market prices. And then imagine if this was used as a stabilizing force for the dollar, or maybe even a partial return to the gold standard. Maybe as a stabilizing force to fight inflation. Maybe as a way to stop printing so much money. It could be a game changer. Could be. Because remember, we have to see if the gold is still in the vaults. Now, let me burst the bubble of my own daydream here with a little problem called rehypothecation. Haven't talked to you about this in years. Now, what rehypothecation is basically, I think, the closest thing you can get to a Ponzi scheme. If we use rehypothecation for our gold, we're in trouble. Let me explain. Let's just use cars and the Hertz rental car because this is going to hurt. Let's say Hertz rental car goes to Bank One and they're asking for a loan because they want to buy a 1976 Firebird, okay? Well, the bank loans Hertz $60,000, but they keep that Firebird as collateral or an asset on their sheet, okay? So Hertz rental cars has that. They then put that on their sheet as an asset as well. 1976 Firebird, $60,000. They go to another bank and they ask another bank, I got to buy another one of these. Can I get a loan? And the other bank, they do the same thing. They give a loan of $60,000 and they use the same 1976 Firebird as collateral. Then you come in and rent it. Now, if you came in and leased it, and remember that word because that's what they do with gold, the first person leases the gold. So let's say you come in and you want to lease the Firebird. That's great. That's the way the system works. But see, you usually stop there because anything past here is kind of illegal. So you lease it, but then you go to the bank and you go, hey, I've got this Firebird. I need a $60,000 loan. I'll give this to you as an asset or collateral. And the bank says, okay. So they loan you $60,000 and they put on their asset sheet and collateral as the 1976 Firebird. Then they go to Bank 3, which gives another loan for a Firebird, which they use as collateral asset. And then this bank needs another 60 grand. So they go to Bank 4 and Bank 4 loans Bank 3 $60,000 and uses the Firebird as collateral. Are you seeing the problem here? Bank 4 goes to Bank 5. They use the Firebird as collateral or asset and they loan $60,000. So you're about $360,000 in for the same damn car. And you have 6 people claiming it's an asset. Now, this is all fine and dandy unless this guy defaults and this guy says, I need the asset. I need the asset. I need the asset here. You're not repaying me, so I have to have it. One does it, okay. However, if there's a problem, and don't worry, this will never happen. If there's a problem, and a lot of these people say, hey, I need that asset, I need that car right now, I need the collateral, call that in. Who owns the car? Do these guys own it? Or these guys? Or you? Or this bank? Or this bank, this bank, this bank? Which one? See, I looked up the difference between rehypothecation and Ponzi. And in a nutshell, there's some differences, but in a nutshell, it's pretty much the government can rehypothesize gold, but they can't allow you to engage in a Ponzi scheme. That's pretty much the difference. Same thing. We need to know that America's gold is America's gold, period. Did you know that when Germany asked the Federal Reserve for their gold back about 10, 15 years ago, it took 4 years to get it back to be fully accounted for. And it seems as though they might have melted the gold down because it no longer had the markings of German gold. Why? That's weird. Anyway, but it was pure. Okay, so we need to know that it's accounted for. And we need to know it because it undergirds the financial system, the full faith and credit of the United States. Our trust in government begins with the gold.